Hello, I'm Tom Cadigan, Director of Alumni Regional and Special Programs, and a proud member of the class of 2002. And wherever you may be zooming in from, I want to welcome you to today's alumni and parent webinar event brought to you by the Holy Cross Club of Greater Boston. Now, today's topic hits home for many of us: home buying. Our presentation today is titled Everything You Need to Know About Buying a Home in 2025, a popular topic based on the number of registrants in our discussion. Some housekeeping notes before I introduce today's presenter. We'll be together for just about an hour. Allie will start with some prepared remarks, and then we'll take questions from you for as long as time allows. And I encourage you to submit questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A function located on your toolbar. Please keep them coming, and I'll return later to facilitate your questions. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce our terrific presenter, Allie Dudley Joyce, class of 2010, an experienced Boston professional and a long-standing volunteer with the Holy Cross Club of Greater Boston. She's a past president of the club. Allie is a realtor for William Ravis Real Estate, Mortgage, and Insurance. She is an award-winning Massachusetts and Rhode Island real estate professional. Allie has led many seminars and webinars like this for Holy Cross alumni, parents, and friends, and we are so grateful for her involvement today. Allie, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tom. I love to do these with you every year and give back to the Holy Cross community. I'm feeling pretty pleased with myself. I remember to wear my Holy Cross sweater, and I have my Holy Cross water bottle, so I'm definitely repping the school. Proud Holy Cross grad over here. So as Tom mentioned, I have some things I want to discuss with you. Hopefully it's going to be able to empower you in this experience, whatever, wherever your home buying real estate investment journey takes you. I'll start off with just a little bit of background on myself. And as Tom mentioned, Holy Cross grad of 2010. I had really big plans coming out of college. I was a psychology major, and I said, okay, I am going to be a clinician. I really believed in that line of work, and I'm going to buy real estate. And by the time I'm ready to be a mother and have children, I'm going to have this real estate portfolio, and I just manage that portfolio. So a little unrealistic dreams for a 21-year-old. I, was starting to look into my career a little bit more, and I realized, okay, I have to get my PhD, and that doesn't pay, and that's about 6 years. So I had to reevaluate once I found out how expensive real estate was. And I followed in a mentor of mine's footsteps, and I went into financial services sales. So this just shows you that your Holy Cross education can really take you anywhere. So psych major therapist, wannabe therapist to financial services sales, and my heart really was not in the business. I wanted to acquire real estate, and that's where my passion lied. So I decided at one point to take the plunge. And it's funny because my clients at the time were financial advisors, and they still reach out to me on LinkedIn, and they're like, you did it. You went into real estate, and just makes me chuckle because I'm like, wow, what was I talking to them about? Obviously not mutual funds and ETFs. But here I am, and I haven't looked back. I've had the pleasure of helping over 300 individuals and families sell or buy homes. I've also been featured in a few different publications and received some awards. And all of this is just to tell you, I've done this a couple of times, and I'm going to share with you my experience as an active participant in the market. And as I said before, ways for you to educate yourself on this process and empower you. So a couple of things we're going to be going over today. We'll talk about some legislative changes, which it sounds like some of you are aware of from the Q&A. We'll talk about the market and interest rates, The buying process in general, we'll round it up with some negotiation tactics and advice, and then we'll open it up to questions. Okay, so two main, very recent legislative changes. One that I don't have mentioned here, which isn't as recent as, last year, it's a little longer than that. And someone did ask a question about it, so I'd like to address it, is ADUs, accessory dwelling units. So if you own a primary residence, meaning it is your main home, it's not a rental property, you own and live there, then you can add an ADU. And yes, it is a great wealth building strategy or a way to help a family member who is either aging or maybe needs to get up on their feet again. One thing you just have to make note of is once you vacate that property and let's say you wanted to hold on, let's say it was a single family, okay? You wanted to hold on to it as a rental property. You could not rent out the ADU anymore. That can only be in use as you are living in it as a primary residence. So my caution to anyone who might be interested in that is be wary of the amount of construction you're going to put in to make that a complying ADU, and plan to either be there for a long time or to sell the property instead of making it a single family to a two family kind of a thing, or just be okay with, if you're renting it out as a single unit, blocking that off and not having that in monetary investment be utilized anymore. More recent legislative changes are the NAR and DOJ ruling. So there's a legal side to this, and then there's a practical side to it. So what the ruling was last August, the NAR and DOJ came to a settlement agreement where there would be a decoupling of real estate fees. Previously, the seller paid the listing agent, and the listing agent split the fee with the buyer's agent. Now, what is happening is the seller is responsible for the listing agent's fee, and the buyer is responsible for the buyer's agent fee. What happens in practicality, at least in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and I believe in New Hampshire as well, is the buyer's agent's commission is being written into the offer. So the seller is being requested to pay that out of their proceeds. It becomes a negotiating element. The seller is not obligated to pay anything, but there is a new line item in the offer that says buyer fee is X and it is to come from the seller's proceeds. So yes, there is kind of a mental switch, but there's not so much of a practical switch in the market. The other is mandatory home inspections. This is very new. As of last week, October 15th, this law came into effect. Now, every buyer actually has to submit an offer with a home inspection. You can no longer waive your home inspection. You can choose to not do a home inspection if you get that offer accepted, but you cannot make any inkling that you will waive a home inspection. And the reason for this is so that the seller isn't choosing an offer based on a waived home inspection. So ultimately, this is a really positive change in the market. Waiving inspections was becoming pervasive, and I would talk to potential clients, and depending on what towns they were interested in, the statistical reality was that you could not buy into that town with a home inspection. And that's a really tough pill to swallow as a buyer. And so this is extremely positive. What could be some of the repercussions? We'll see. I actually have two listings right now that are in the throes of this. Prices could go up if inventory still doesn't increase, if that's the only way buyers can compete, or maybe more homes are going to come on the market because buyers decide to pull out of the transaction. Right now, just interestingly, I have, again, I'm on the sell side, and the buyers are coming back pretty aggressive on the home inspection requests. So it's definitely a shock for the sellers, having been used to waiving inspection. And so we'll just see what happens. I mean, it could be something that just evens itself out, like the NAR ruling, and there's not much of an effect. But ultimately, it's a very positive change in the market. Okay, so let's talk about market trends. I know everyone wants to hear about interest rates. I'm going to talk about what's really driving our market in Massachusetts and Boston and Greater Boston specifically. We'll talk about a bifurcation between the condo market and the single family market, single family home market. And then we'll talk about a little theory and strategy that I like to call the tipping point that I use with my own clients. Okay, so I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but interest rates are not going down that much. By the end of this year, they are suspecting, or actually even by the end of next year, they're suspecting maybe they're going to go down to the high fives at best. So if you are in the sidelines waiting for interest rates to drop, I would say don't hold your breath. In general, it's very difficult to time the market. And if anyone is in finance as well, you'll know this. You know, it's really unpredictable. And I would say the reasons why you're going to wait to buy is because the timing isn't right for you personally. Maybe you need to save more of a nest egg, or you're in some sort of transition either with your career or your personal life, and you don't know where you're going to end up or where you want to buy. If you're waiting for prices to drop or you're waiting for interest rates to drop, I would say don't hold your breath. Work with what you have now. One benefit of taking the plunge now is that if interest rates do drop more significantly over the next 5 years, then you are already going to have that home and have settled into that mortgage rate, and then you can refinance, and all of a sudden you're going to really open up your personal budget and reduce your cost of living. Whereas maybe other people who are entering the market at that point, there could be another surge of prices depending on how long or how low the interest rates go. Okay, so let's talk about what is really driving this market. Everyone thought that after the gains we saw in housing prices during COVID, that the increase of interest rates would have caused prices to go down. And unfortunately, it really didn't. What it comes down to is the supply, and our demand is outpacing the supply in the market. And that is always going to be a formula for prices to stabilize and increase. What we're starting to see, though, and I alluded to before, is a bifurcation in the single family versus the condo market. And it's really just starting right now. So, in this particular slide, you see the single family market here is the lighter blue line, or excuse me, is the darker blue line, and the condo is the lighter blue line. So you can see the supply for the condos was always greater than the single families. At one point in 2018, it was lower. That was when the condo market was really hot. But the single family market has much lower supply than the condo market. And that's starting to translate into price. So in this one, it's flip-flop. Kind of the bright blue line is single family, and the darker blue line is the condo market. But you can see that the single family in just after COVID had really steep pricing gains, and the condo market has kind of stabilized, if not gone down a little bit in most recent time. Whereas the single family market has continued to increase in price, but just at a more nominal rate and not as steep as we had seen them before. So what I'm telling potential buyers right now is that if you're interested in a condo, it's not a bad time to start exploring that. The one thing that's always going to serve you in real estate is your hold time. There's an old adage that I think is very true. It says, time heals all wounds in real estate. So, in an ideal world, you want to be holding a property for a minimum of 5 years, if not 7. And the longer you can hold that property, the better you can ride the waves of the market. So I'm definitely encouraging buyers, if you're interested in a condo, explore that area. Of course, if a single family is right for you, then then that's what you have to go with. And even myself, I kind of have a unique business. I cover, Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, and the surrounding suburbs, really kind of in an hour radius. And the single families, if they are under a certain price point, they are gone in a blink of an eye. And the condos are starting to sit on the market for longer and longer. And that's just the nature of the market right now. And it really is an indication of supply and demand. Okay, so let's talk about what I like to call the tipping point. This is a strategy that I use with some clients if it fits for them. The data I took from Dedham, which is my new hometown. My family and I just moved. So Dedham is kind of a cool town and works well for this kind of an exercise because there's such a diversified housing stock. You can buy, a ranch for 500, you can buy in precinct 1 for 3 million. So you see the data on, I think it's not quite a bell curve, that would have been perfect, but kind of a general, little bit of a bell shape with a dip in the middle. But basically, what it's showing you is that the majority of the transactions, the median price point is 788. The average sales price, which is kind of a interesting data point as well, is 960, and that's because there's a big group of homes that are selling in that 700 to 900 range, and then there's a big group of homes in the 1 million to 1.4 range. So in Dedham, the tipping point is over that 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 price range. So certain clients, where it's more about the house and they're open to different locations, we might maximize their budget by looking at this. Where are you going to be over the tipping point in a town or a city so that your buying experience is a little bit more even? And then all of a sudden, you're getting a lot more for your money. Whereas at the lower price point, it feels like you are really paying a lot just to get into the town. And every town, every city, this is going to look different. And for some people, it's about, they grew up in X town and they got to live in X town. And you just work within those parameters. And maybe if you're in the more competitive price point, we're going to be changing our strategy to be risk management versus, versus maximizing, the tipping point and taking on that type of a strategy. Okay, so let's talk about the home buying process. In general, most people get a loan. It's going to take anywhere from 30 to 60 days. The average is 45. You could go longer than 60 days. That would usually be a negotiating point. It'd be outside of the norm. If you are buying in cash, you can actually close as quickly as 2 or 3 weeks. It would really depend on your attorney and how quickly they can get the title done. So we'll assume this is a financing purchase, and we'll start with step number 1, which is consult with a buyer's agent. Now, of course, you don't have to use a real estate agent. So if you don't want to use a real estate agent, just, check your email or something. But obviously, I'm an agent, so I'll give you some background as to how I work with clients. And after doing this for so many years, what I think you should expect from a real estate agent. Because the unfortunate thing of the industry is there's a low barrier to entry. So not everyone operates the same, not everyone charges the same, and you need to find the right fit for you, and it really comes down to trust. So you're going to have a consultation with the agent. I usually like to spend about an hour after maybe a quick discovery call, and we're either in Zoom or in person, and you're talking about not only what you want in a home and your budget, but what are your short term and long term goals? Is real estate going to become a part of your wealth strategy? What is your hold time for the house? All of this is going into how I would advise you as a real estate agent. Couple of things you should be aware of as what the role of a real estate agent is. First and foremost, a real estate agent in the state of Massachusetts is a fiduciary. That means we are bound by law to do everything in your best interest. And if it doesn't feel like that, that's not a good sign, and you should find someone else to work with or do it yourself. Totally up to you. Also, with that fiduciary responsibility, you are supposed to be presented with a Massachusetts agency disclosure at your first time of meeting. And if that doesn't happen, I would say that's also a red flag. So it looks a little different these days. If you're not in person, it might be over Zoom, or it might be just mentioned on a phone call and then emailed, but that should be discussed in your first meeting. The real estate agent should be a market expert in whatever area you're looking for. Ideally, they have a wide territory that they cover. So if you are if you might have a couple of towns you're interested in, but the inventory is so low, maybe they introduce you to a few other towns that could fit the bill. Um, you want them to help educate you on the home ownership process, especially if you are a first time home buyer. It can feel very overwhelming. And then, of course, they're going to be evaluating your condition. In my opinion, we don't want the condition of the home to be left to the home inspection. The due diligence of the property begins right when you show up, right when you're researching it online, to make sure you're not wasting your time submitting an offer on a property that's not going to be a good long-term fit for you. They're also the strategists. They're going to help you take on calculated risks in order to purchase real estate. Buying real estate, no matter what market you're in, is not without risk. So they're going to help manage that within your own risk parameters and help you get the best deal for the property that they can based on the market conditions. They're also going to be your anchor contact, meaning the real estate agent should be your go-to. Something's going on, they're your go-to, they get it done. Maybe they have to connect you to someone else, but ideally they're going to whoever it is in order to get that done. You have a question, the real estate agent takes care of it for you. It should really feel like a stress-free process, and that you're being shepherded. I like to use that expression, that you're being shepherded through the process. And, God forbid, maybe it's a little fun. It can be stressful, but it can also be kind of fun. It's a huge, momentous occasion, whether you are, this isn't your first home or it's your multiple homes that you own. Usually it's a cause for celebration if it's a first home, a second home, a vacation home, an investment property. So you're spending a lot of time with this person, and hopefully you will enjoy their company. Next up, I recommend that you talk to a mortgage professional if you are getting a loan. If you're using cash, perhaps you discuss with your financial advisor. Um, as you're evaluating mortgage professional, everyone thinks, who's going to give me the best rate? Well, guess what? I am going to tell you that they all basically give you the same rate, okay? There's very little difference between what they can offer you. It's going to be based on your debt to income ratio, your assets, and your credit. Now, the only exception to this is, and actually someone asked this in the questions, is TD. TD offers a really, really exceptional doctor's loan program. They undercut everyone else in terms of the rates that they offer and how high they will loan to you. You can actually put 0% down on a $1 million loan, and your interest rate won't be through the roof. So that's the one exception. TD does offer a very differentiated program for that subsect of the community. Everyone else, pretty much offers the same. And if someone is talking to you about interest rates, oh, I can get you this really good interest rate. My interest rates are this right now. I would argue that's a red flag, because any person who has your best interest in mind will tell you interest rates don't matter until you have an accepted offer. Without an accepted offer, you can't lock your interest rate. So I would say do some research, talk to a couple people, find someone who you trust, who is going to help you figure out when is the best time to lock. When I recently bought a home, it was I rate locked, I think in May, sometime in May, could have been end of April. And it was during an extremely volatile rate moment that we were having. And the Fed had actually was toying with a rate drop, but what happened is rates went way up. And my loan officer had the foresight to tell me Allie, I'm nervous. I'm not sleeping at night. I'm really nervous about your rate lock. I want you and David to lock in now. And he said, I think based on the news that I'm seeing, that interest rates are going to go up and you're going to miss this opportunity to get this rate. So he didn't want to gamble with us. And guess what? We locked and the rates went up a full point. It was a really crazy time. And there will be pockets of time like that. So you want to make sure that this person is going to help you navigate the market, and when the time comes, they're there to respond and to help you, because we're going to talk about the mortgage commitment date. And the only one who suffers from missing that is you. So you really need to make sure that the mortgage professional is going to meet the deadlines on time, has a sense of urgency, is available on the weekends if we need a pre-approval, and is going to be able to give you monthly payment numbers so you can decide, should I submit an offer at this price point? So once you determine the best person to work with, then it's the fun part. You get to go look at property. And this is awesome. Obviously, I'm biased, I'm in the business, but lots of adventures. I'm always surprised at the things that I see. Sometimes things wow you in not a great way. But it's really the best part of the process, in my opinion. Now, everyone's a little different. Some people need a lot of context to make this decision, and some people are snipers, and they just are like, "Yep, that's it. I don't want to see anything else. This is it. Let's go all in." And it's really all about your journey. So you have to trust your gut. Your gut is going to tell you, really one of two things. Either I'm worried there's going to be more things out there, or I'm worried I'm going to lose this. And that's going to help you navigate what decision to make. All right, so let's talk about showing due diligence. So this is a really important part. As I mentioned before, we're not just looking like, okay, is grandma's table going to fit in here? No, we want to see, is this the right home for you? And is this something you can take on? In Massachusetts, we have a lot of older homes. Personally, I love older homes, but not everyone wants to deal with things that come up. We also don't want to put you in a situation where you're going to be shocked by something at the home inspection and pull out of the deal if we could have found out before, because that's stressful and is an emotional experience you don't need to, you don't need to experience. Of course, there are things that can happen that you can't control, but if we can control it, then we will. So first off, this is knob and tube wiring. You definitely want to be wary of this. It's once you know what it looks like, it's pretty obvious to find. So those white knobs and tubes are porcelain knobs and tubes. They are considered a fire hazard, and you cannot get home insurance if there's knob and tube wiring. So if we see knob and tube wiring in a house, and then basically I want to know before you do, if you're interested in the house, how is the seller handling this? Because you might not be able to close. There are some insurance companies that will allow it, that they're going to want to make sure that you do it at a certain time period after closing. And just by seeing it initially, you cannot tell how pervasive it is in the home. So this can be very, very expensive to remediate. So if it's not well below your budget, if it's not a home that you need to just gut rehab, then this is something that might prevent you from buying the home. So next up is asbestos. Asbestos is a material that was used, that if it crumbles and deteriorates and you breathe in the dust from it, it can give you mesothelioma. So not great. Apparently was a great insulator though, but we're choosing our health these days over insulation. So here are just a few examples that you might see. We'll start with the easiest one to remediate is the top right. That's the asbestos tile. Again, it's similar to the knob and tube. Once you see it, you can recognize it very easily. This can be encapsulated with other tile as long as it's in good condition. The bottom right is asbestos siding. This home inspectors tend to be less worried about it because there's less likelihood, because you're not in a confined space, that you're going to breathe in those particles. But it's an eyesore, it's bad for resale, so it is something that you're probably going to want to take care of. Again, if it's in good condition, it can be encapsulated. The top left is insulation over a pipe. It used to be that you could encapsulate this, and if you ever see, something that has like a thick plastic on it, that's probably encapsulated asbestos. Now they really want it to be fully removed and remediated, and anytime there's full removal, it's going to be more expensive. And then you have the bottom left is vermiculite. Now, not all vermiculite is asbestos, but I haven't met a vermiculite that didn't have asbestos in it. So I guess in my experience, more often than not, it's going to be have asbestos in it. So look, am I saying not to buy a house if you see this? Absolutely not. But we want you to just know about it up front, and it could be something that we submit with the offer ahead of time. So this is a federal electric panel. This panel has been recalled. So if you see this, it again can be an insurance problem, and you have to know immediately you need to completely redo your electric panel. Here is probably a good picture of what lead paint would look like today. You can see that it's scaling, that is typical of lead paint, and you can also see that underneath the chips are appears to be the wood, so it appears to be the first layer of paint. You'll often see this on exterior door jambs and window sills. You'll see it sometimes on the inside. Oftentimes in Massachusetts, we always have the lead paint disclosure, but it'll say no knowledge of lead paint. So from practical speaking, most homes have been covered so much in latex paint that there's probably lead paint underneath, but there's very few concerns that it's actually going to be consumed. Now that's a risk everyone is going to, have a personal preference on. But this would be an instant where I would say, yes, this is probably lead paint. If you want to get it professionally remediated by someone who has and get a lead cert, you can do that. Or if you are just going to not test and just have it scraped and painted, inform your painter of that and make sure that you're not in the home and that there is a really thorough cleaning afterwards. So of course, when you're at the showing, we're going to look at the roof. The first thing that I do is always take a couple steps back from a house and I try and inspect the roof and see what I can see. We have a few different pictures of examples of roofs. The bottom left is a slate roof, very beautiful roof, very expensive roof. You typically don't redo a slate roof all at once. As needed, you're going to replace the shingles. You also see a rubber roof in the top middle there. Rubber roof is really in the more urban areas. When evaluating a rubber roof, we want to see that it's nice and smooth, there's no wrinkles, and that the seam is nice and tight and not lifting. Rubber roofs can last a long time, as long as they are well maintained. It is very typical for a rubber roof to have pooling and water on it because there's no incline for it to run off to. However, if you have the opportunity to get on the roof, and if there's a roof deck, you can bet we're going on the roof. You want to feel it and see, is it spongy? If it's spongy, that's a sign the material is starting to deteriorate and you could have water seepage. Now, depending on how pervasive it is, it could be a patch that you take care of, or it could be something where, really the roof needs to be replaced. Most common shingles you're going to see are the asphalt shingles. There's a 3-tab. I'm referencing the bottom middle picture right now. The 3-tab is on the left and the architectural shingle is on the right. 3-tab shingle tends to last about 10 to 20 years, where the architectural shingle will last upwards of 30 to 40 years. So right off the bat, if we are seeing the 3-tab shingle, we know that has a lower life expectancy, and we're looking to see the condition of the roof. So we want to see if there is discoloration on the roof. If there is, that could be an indication of sun damage or the particles of the shingles deteriorating. The top left here is an extreme example of that. Um, the top right is an example of lifting shingles. So if shingles are starting to lift, that's just an indication that the roof is older. It's seen more weather experiences. As shingles lift, there's a potential for them to fall off, and then there's potential for water to get underneath. The bottom right is an extreme case of lichen growth on a roof. This is something that's a little bit more of a maintenance item. You want to soft wash, not power wash your roof to remove this because it can reduce the lifespan of the roof. It can create more increased opportunity for the shingles to lift and for the roof to fail. Okay, so we are looking at foundations right now. So everyone loves the poured concrete foundation because that's the neatest and the newest that we're seeing. That's the top right. The top left is a fieldstone foundation. I don't mind a fieldstone foundation. They are more porous, but there's an expression, solid as rock for a reason. It's a natural material that has maybe no lifespan on it or an extremely long lifespan on it. And older homes that were built with this fieldstone foundation, I mean, they're not going anywhere. It does need to be maintained with mortar. You'll see sometimes if someone has put spray foam in there, that is not the correct way to maintain the roof. Sometimes a pest remediation company will do that, but you really want to dig that out and replace it with mortar. The bottom right is a cinder block foundation. This you're going to see more in kind of that mid-century home. Um, you know, I have seen a cinder block foundation fail. It was coming on 100 years old. And essentially, we were certain. I usually like to start up in the house and then work my way down because the basement's usually the least fun, although the most important. And in the bedroom, the wall had actually just kind of sunk down in the house. And sure enough, when we went down into the basement, we had seen that there was, severe separation with the cinder blocks. So that's a pretty scary one. I can tell you that I advised my clients not to buy that home. I have also seen a poured concrete foundation that was a little sketchy. Basically, and you can keep an eye out for this when you're looking at them if you ever have the opportunity. There was horizontal lines of discoloration in the wall in the foundation, and what that indicated was that the person who was pouring the concrete foundation didn't have enough cement in his truck or her truck, and they had to keep coming back to pour the foundation. And this is a new construction home, so is the foundation going to fail in that instance? No, home inspector wasn't concerned, but it told a story about the house. So this is just a great example of things that we're picking up on at showings. And, my client felt that they loved the house. It was in the location that they wanted, and they were willing to take that risk on. And and they've been happy there, and it's fine. So everyone's going to have their own decisions, but there were some things they had to deal with. The home warranty, luckily there was a home warranty because obviously there wasn't consistent foresight in the project. So other showing due diligence in the basement, we're going to look at the main beam. If we see some movement in the floors, which you're often going to see in older homes, you always want to cross-reference the main beam and see, is it twisting? Is it compromised in any way? Are the lally columns bowing? And this will just be an initial check to say, okay, how much intervention is needed to fix this? Is this something I want to take on, or is it just natural settlement in the older home? All right, so you have looked at the properties, you're ready to make an offer, you've talked strategy. I'm just going to tell you what goes into the offer. So, first off is your offer deposit. This is $1,000 and it's going to be held in an escrow account only if the offer is accepted. We have your offer itself, which outlines how much you're going to give and when, and the contingency document, which is typically a mortgage contingency and an inspection contingency, although everything is negotiable in real estate. So I've had an Oscar the dog contingency, I've had a wood chopping contingency. Um, Anything goes. If it's a condo, you're going to do a condo doc and financial review contingency. But that's what that exists for. And of course, you have your pre-approval, your agency disclosure, which you signed at the first time of your meeting with your agent, hopefully. And then your lead paint disclosure, if applicable. And now there's a new form that is a home inspection disclosure that is mandatory with the new home inspection law. So let's say the offer gets accepted. Three things happen really quickly. We got to get that deposit over to them. Most of the time it is electronic and there's a small fee, maybe $10 to $25. The reason why we want to get this offer to the seller, the deposit to the seller as soon as possible is because that is what binds your offer. It is the conveyance, so it legally binds the seller to you. You're going to want to select an attorney to represent you as a buyer, and then you're going to want to get your home inspection scheduled. Now, me as the agent, I help my buyers with all of this. Some people, everyone operates a little differently. I will basically, take care of those three items for you. You want to do the inspection as soon as possible. So when you're writing the offer, you should be talking about potential inspection timelines to make sure your inspection review period is realistic for you to get everything done within your work per within whatever you have going on with work. And the other reason why I want to do as soon as possible, so that if there is additional due diligence we need to look into, we will have time to do that. So simultaneously as this is going on, the buyer's attorney is working with the seller's attorney on the second contract, which is the purchase and sale. So Massachusetts, I believe, is one of two states in the United States that has two contracts. So we have the offer and then the purchase and sale. Both are signed electronically. At the time of the purchase and sale, you have 5% of the purchase price due minus 1,000. So there's an aggregate of 5% in the escrow account. And again, that's not touched until closing, and then it goes towards your total purchase price. After you do the purchase and sale, that's when you start really delving more into the financing. So you're going to get a lot of nitty-gritty questions from the underwriter. A lot of people find it kind of annoying. So that means they're a good underwriter. That's their job. If you're a W-2, it probably won't be too bad. But if you're a business owner like myself, just hunker down, make sure you have all the paperwork necessary, and just expect there to be a lot of questions. So in about 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks really after the purchase and sale, this is your mortgage commitment date. This is an extremely important date because as long as you notify the other parties prior to this date, that your financial circumstances have changed, and let's say you can't get a loan, as long as you notify the parties prior to this date, you're going to get all of that deposit back. So it's so important that you have as clean a commitment as possible and that you work towards that date, because it is your right as a buyer to request an extension, but the seller does not have to give you an extension. They can release your deposit. And we don't want that to happen either, especially if, we're being more cautious about extending the mortgage commitment. You're still taking on that risk. So that's why it's really important to make sure you are working with a lender who is on top of that. And then about a week prior to closing, you'll get a preliminary closing disclosure. The actual closing disclosure might not come in until the day before. There are a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of different people involved that you're depending on. Towns will also have different rules. For example, the town of Randolph, you can only do a final water reading the day before closing, which is, kind of crazy because that needs to be in the closing disclosure. So, it is what it is. So you're not going to get the final numbers until the day before, but you'll work with your attorney to do an estimate a few days before you're going to send a wire or prepare a bank check. And then the actual closing is going to happen typically in the morning. And I recommend the final walkthrough and the closing both happen in the morning if your schedule allows. One, we want natural light to be able to see everything. And then two, you want to maximize your recourse of the final walkthrough. God forbid anything happens, there's an opportunity for an additional negotiation. And then the closing itself is a little anticlimactic. You just sign a bunch of paperwork and that gets submitted to the registry, and you don't actually get your keys usually until you're recorded. So there's a lag time between the final walkthrough and your access to the property, and that's the time that it takes to go on record. So if you are planning to move, I would recommend not planning to move the day you close. Plan for the next day. So it's just that easy, my friends, to buy a home. Before we open it up to questions, I will just talk a little bit about negotiations. There's a lot of different things you can do to negotiate in real estate, and it depends on the market that you're buying in and the situation of the home. Is this more of a give and take negotiation, or is this a multiple offer situation and we are helping you take on calculated risk to put you in the best position of purchasing the home within your own risk parameters? So I like to think of the offer as different levers that we can pull. We can pull all of the levers, and then that's going to be, the most aggressive offer, or you're going to give a little here, give a little there in order to do something that is appealing to the seller, but also works for you. So in terms of price, that's going to be obviously a big one for most sellers. But if something, in my opinion, has been on the market for longer than 2 weeks, it's fair game to go under asking. A lot of buyers will ignore property that has been on the market for a while because they're wondering what happened, what's wrong with it. And that's very normal, but sometimes there is something wrong with it, but often it's just overpriced. Now, so that can be, I always like to think of that as a great opportunity because you can go in at a better purchase price, and maybe you have to be a little more reasonable with your home inspection follow-up because the seller gave you so much on price, but perhaps that's the bigger win. The other thing that can be a great strategy is timing. I'm always willing to hustle for my clients if it's going to help us, as long as my clients feel comfortable with it. That could mean getting a home inspection done in a few days. That could mean closing really quickly. That could mean going to purchase and sale really quickly. I also love a really fast offer expiration timeline. In my opinion, if you are selling, you don't need to think that much about your response. So if I'm giving you a slam dunk offer that's at asking, maybe a little above asking, and there's no offer deadline, you can bet that I'm only giving you a few hours to think about that. And the reason why is because I don't want the listing agent to take my offer and shop it around. I want the seller to have some urgency to accept this bird in the hand, waiting for two in the bush, or trying to create a multiple offer situation. And then of course there's your terms. So, I had alluded to before, there's dollar amounts you can add to the inspection to say, I'm willing to deal with 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 amount of repairs that come up in the inspection without walking away. It doesn't prevent you from negotiating on those, but it does say that, you're willing to have a little bit more skin on the game and deal with things that might come up. There's also your financing terms. One thing we're seeing quite a bit right now is adding appraisal language, which means, with how inflated prices are, and in some market where properties are going hundreds of thousands over asking, buyers are putting in language saying that the property doesn't need to appraise. You certainly need to have a lot of cash behind you to do that. Or they are saying, they're willing to make up a certain dollar amount between an appraisal gap, meaning you the property offer is $1 million, but it came in at 950. You're willing to make 10 grand up of that difference, but the expectation is the seller will come down to meet the rest. But it is a negotiation if the property does not appraise. Um, in general, I think the best advice I've been given by a mentor who owns a lot of real estate property, and hopefully this will land with you, and it's sometimes winning means coming in second place. So there's a lot of little things that happen in the transaction that can really grind your gears. And you're not always dealing with holy cross roads on the other side. So, you got to keep your eye on the prize and the big picture in mind. And maybe you lose a few battles because you're winning the war. So, with that, we'll open it up to questions. And I'll just say, I'm wishing everyone the very best in whatever comes next.
Ellie, thank you so much for you gave us a lot to think about, and we are very appreciative. And I know we have some questions for you, and we have a time for a few of them. So if it's okay with you, I'll jump right in. We've had a couple people ask this. The concept of buying and selling at the same time. How would you have any recommendations for coordinating that where you're looking to buy a new place, but then you also have your place that you're living in? What are some tips for trying to navigate the buying and selling simultaneously, if I want to say that?
Yes, so that is a tricky situation, but a lot of people are in your shoes, so not to worry. It depends on a few things. You do you need to sell to buy? And you might want to sell to buy, meaning you don't need you don't want to carry two mortgages. But from a debt to income ratio, can you carry two mortgages? And do you have enough assets in order to purchase without having a home sale contingency? It's very, very difficult to get an offer accepted with a home sale contingency. In an ideal situation, you are, and this is what I recommend to my clients who are in this situation, is that we prepare the listing. We get the photos done, we get the staging. You stage within your home, so it's within your own furniture, and you get all of that done so that you're ready to go. And then you take as long as possible, as long as you need to find that next property. Because when you're buying, when you're usually you're upsizing or you're downsizing, it's not your first rodeo. You really are laser focused on what you want, and it takes a little bit longer sometimes to find that. So you want to give yourself a nice long runway, and then once you find that property, you can um, be just listed on the market right away so that you're not contingent on a simultaneous sale, but you can try and make it so you are selling at the same time. Now, the listing price is going to be in flux because you don't know when you first budgeted for that if the market is going to change, and you're going to want to strategize that listing price in a way where it sells quickly, because the ultimate goal will be not carrying two mortgages. The other way to do it, if you absolutely need your proceeds, is to sell and have a contingency to find suitable housing. Now, the most someone can really give you is about 4 months, a 2 month close and a 2 month use in occupancy. Because if they're buying, if the buyer on the other end is buying it as a primary residence, they need to occupy the property within 2 months. Otherwise, they're violating the terms of their financing. So that's the other way to do it. And then, of course, the final way is you buy, take as long as you need to buy, and you wait until optimal time to sell for you. And that would involve paying two mortgages. So it depends on what your financial circumstances are. I would say the first option is what most people end up doing.
All right. Well, we're a few days away from Halloween, so this question
Okay.
is very timely. How does the fall market compare to other seasons in general? And kind of a follow-up to that is, As rates go down, maybe marginally, do you think now is a better time to buy than, say, in 6, 9, 12 months?
Absolutely. I love when buyers are out there in the fall and winter months because usually the sellers are selling because they have to. For example, they just bought a property and now they're that scenario we just talked about and they need to sell it right away. Um, so they're not the sellers who plan for the spring. So I would say it's a great time. There's less competition with buyers out there. And the beauty of buying now would be, you're dealing with whatever we have for an interest rate, a little quieter of a market just because of the seasonality. And then years down the line, when hopefully we have more interest rate relief, you're going to feel, like you're Richie Rich with your low mortgage payment where everyone else is, you know, um, hopefully it's not another COVID frenzy where prices go way up. So I would say, you know, be open to get out there now. Don't pressure yourself to force something to work out, but absolutely great time.
We probably have time for a couple more questions, but here's a common one. Um, Besides down payments, what are some other unexpected expenses that might creep up during a home buying process?
That's a great question. So, typically you pay for your appraisal up front. That's usually 600. You are going to have closing costs, which are a combination of, lender fees and your escrow. So you're pre-paying your taxes and insurance to the mortgage company to pay out. And there could be a chance where you might have to make up the difference with your real estate agent fee. That's going to be negotiated in the offer, so you will know of it up front. And also, I would say one other thing is the home inspection. Home inspections are kind of pricey. Obviously, they're well worth it. If it depends on the square footage, but I would budget for anywhere from 500 to 1,000 for the home inspection.
That's good to know. That's good advice. And kind of a final question to be conscious of time. We have a good number of people that are new to this on the line tonight. And a common question that we've heard from, in your opinion, where should someone start when they're looking to buy either a single family home or a condo? I know you kind of walked us through the timeline, but in your opinion, someone is looking to come into this for the first time. They have no experience. Where should they start in the home buying process?
Well, this is going to sound really biased and self-serving, and I don't mean it to be as such, but I would start with an agent because if you
Mhm.
truly um, feel like you need someone to hold your hand, and that's what the agent is for. So you might want to talk to a few to get the right feel. Of course, everyone starts on Zillow too. Zillow, Redfin, just get a feel for what your buying power is. Do a little window shopping. That could be your pre phase. But I would say absolutely talk to a real estate agent if they can help connect you to different lenders, introduce you to different markets. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Allie, thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge with us today. I mean, you gave us a lot to think about, and we are very, very grateful. So thank you for being with us today. And we hope to continue offering more of these Holy Cross webinars in the coming months. So please stay tuned for upcoming notices about future dates and future topics. But in the meantime, have a great evening, everyone. And Allie, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. And Tom's going to share my contact info. So if you have any follow-up questions we didn't get to, please don't hesitate to reach out and feel free to follow me on Instagram, Allie.theagent. But thank you, everyone, and thank you, Tom.
Thank you.